Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Martcast, first edition of the season. Man, we have a lot to talk about. I'm your host, Reagan Harris, back with you again. I'm so glad football's back. Oklahoma State football's back, and we didn't lose to an FCS team, so that's also a bonus. But we're going to go over a few things. We're going to talk about Oklahoma State versus South Dakota State. We're going to break down the good, the ugly. Then we're going to break down the QR code madness. I have a few thoughts on that. And then we're going to break down the matchup versus Arkansas pretty briefly. Tomorrow, we're going to have another broadcast, or podcast, listen to me speak. Going to have another podcast with my friend Logan Jones. He's going to be our co-host throughout the year, and he's going to be our general football sort of co-host, so anything that's not Oklahoma State related. And that's going to break down our reactions to the Week 1 slate, which what a slate it was. What a day of football. But man, let's get into this. Oklahoma State versus South Dakota State. Coming in, 13-point favorite. Ended up winning by 24, and it was a very comfortable 24-point win. Kind of got relaxed towards the end. Let them score a touchdown. We probably shouldn't. A lot of 3-and-outs, but the defense ended up holding pretty strong towards the end, which was nice to see. A good trend. I'll tell you, Nardo, with all his faults, one thing that's certain is he always adjusts in the fourth quarter. It seems like the defense comes alive right when it matters, which is a good sign, but also coming out the blocks weak is something that continues to concern me, but we'll get into that. First, let's talk about the good. And I think the first and foremost, obviously, is going to be Oliver Gordon. Oliver Gordington II, the Heisman, whatever we want to call him, man. Oh, my gosh. I don't know how it's possible. I genuinely cannot tell you how it's possible, but he got more explosive in the offseason. I thought he was already the most explosive player in college football. Now he may even be heads and above anyone else. I think that the biggest play was his rushing touchdown where he shoved a South Dakota State linebacker to the dirt, juked out another, and ran to the end zone on a 15-yard run. The explosiveness after he breaks the tackle is terrifying. It's like a freight train. He stiff arms a guy and then almost instantly hits top speed again. It's almost generational. He had 146 total yards, 3 touchdowns, and 10 broken tackles at the absolute minimum. This kid, and he is an absolute talent. He is super special. Oklahoma State's lucky to have him. I'm lucky to watch him play football. And I think the coolest thing is now he's really getting involved in the receiving game, which isn't fair. Lots of screens to the outside. I love it. Blocks on the outside was really good by the receivers as well. Gave him some space on several plays. So that's an exciting piece. We knew Ollie Gordon was going to be good. I had concerns. Last time we had a running back come into the season with high expectations was Chuba Hubbard, and he kind of had a down year because everyone was blitzing and coming after him and trying to make him not be able to do anything, but that wasn't the case for Ollie. He was explosive as always, another 100 yards rushing, continues that insane streak. So, yeah, one of the goods, Ollie Gordon. The second one is got to be the offensive line. Now, specifically offensive line during the pass protection. They gave Bowman on one play in particular. He had about 7 or 8 seconds, and Bowman just sat in the pocket, and eventually Ollie Gordon cut back on a improvised route, and fell on the ball. There was no one open. It was incredible how good South Dakota State's coverage was, and the O-line it was an absolute coverage pass. Incredible stuff. Ollie dived on it. They had to review it, that play in particular. Bowman has so much time in the pocket, and I understand, look, we're talking about an FCS school, and I think the separation between Division I FBS and Division I FCS is this. It's the physicality and it's the trenches. Usually is where you're going to see the biggest differential. So I don't know if this is necessarily the best test, but you're talking about a team that's at the absolute top, the pinnacle of FCS football. So there is a lot to decipher from it. And it was a very impressive performance. I'm excited they brought back the most production of any team in college football. It was like 203 starts or something absolutely ridiculous. Left tackle all the way to right tackle. So you'd expect this. Glass, awesome coach. He's back to doing things exactly how he should. The physicality of the offensive line was incredible. So I think that's a huge plus because Bowman was able to sit in the pocket and be comfortable, which is something he really needs. Next up, the receiving room. Okay, this is my next plus, and I think some people wouldn't include this because there were a few drops on third down. But we are 5 receivers deep this season. Oklahoma State from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 5 have a guy that could be starting virtually, I'd say, on any Big 12 team. And that's huge. We are extremely talented in the receiving core. I was very impressed too, because it seemed like when one guy wasn't open, another got open, and they just couldn't keep up. And that's going to be hard for teams that don't have a deep corner room, a deep secondary. Dejon Stribling was incredible. He had one drop pass from my memory. He may have had a second, but he was very sure-handed. Had 6 catches. That one that tipped off the hands and he rebounded and grabbed it and continued running. That was incredible. That was on 3rd down. He had 83 yards, and that's going to be huge for us. We were missing like a 3rd receiver last season behind Presley and Owens, and Stribling is 100% going to be that guy, and we've got him for 2 more seasons counting this one. So that's extremely exciting. He looked incredible. And then Rashad Owens looked sensational. He had 3 catches for 81 yards, including that 58-yard bomb over the top. He was getting tons of separation. Almost made that insane catch in the corner of the end zone on that 50-50. He's back to being amazing. That guy feels like a Sunday type of talent. He just has the it factor of just getting up and making plays. So I'm excited about Rashad Owens. And then obviously Brennan Presley was awesome. But we also have Gavin Freeman. We saw him get some touches. And man, when he gets more involved, that kid's going to be stupid. He's so fast. He's so quick. He's going to be really fun. And then Ollie Gordon is playing the receiving game. So I have a lot of excitement for that receiving room. And there were guys that you guys didn't even get to see, like King, that are going to come out onto the scene later this season. You're going to be like, who is that guy? And the receiving room is deep. I heard about it in film. I watched a little bit of it. They looked great off the block. Their separation skills are decent. So very excited. That's going to be a fun thing to watch throughout the season. It's probably our best receiving core since senior year of Tylan Wallace. So very fun. Next positive I'd say is it seemed like Dunn was using our playmakers a lot more extensively in the offense. And what do I mean by that? Obviously your playmakers are going to make plays. That's how football works. But they were intentional plays that were drawn up to get specific players open in space, rather than just running concepts like levels or post routes or whatever that were a little bit mindless. It felt like this time there was a lot more thought behind it. We were getting Brennan Presley tons of plays in the early game. He only had 35 yards, but it was like a really impressive 35 yards with a touchdown. Ollie Gordon as well. I mean, he was utilized everywhere. Run game, pass game. That was great to see. Rashad Owens, his strengths were utilized through deep throws. So I just felt like overall the play calling was much better directed towards the strengths of each of our playmakers, which is something that I have complained about in the past. And there seems to be a big improvement there. So that is awesome to see. That'd be my next big old good. Next is the front 7 of the defense. Okay, some people might disagree with this. There were a couple plays where the running, kind of broke free. But that was much better than it was last season. I feel like we were always getting torched in that front line. Oliver didn't look comfortable at linebacker, and there was just something missing. We had Nick Martin, of course, but with a 3-3-5, you really, really need your linebackers to step up. And Kendall Daniels came in and just completely filled that role. I was extremely impressed by that. He looked more comfortable. He looked like he was having more fun. His awareness was higher. He was on the ball a lot more. He just needs to learn to make himself a little bit bigger, especially in those run gaps, fill those a little bit better, and he's going to be really good at linebacker. I think he has a ton of potential at that position, and Colin Oliver looked back to his old self. He just looked incredible, constantly causing pressure. His coverage game was pretty good. And, man, the defensive line was all over the place. Johnson looked good. The quarterback didn't have time. That was the big thing. He didn't have time. And so with the flaws of the secondary, that was filling that gap so sensationally. And I'm really excited. I think that's going to be a big deal. I mean, Jeff Roberson came in and made a couple big plays. Con Clay back to being himself. The pressures were the big thing. There wasn't a ton of sacks in this game. Only had 2, but if you can hurry the QB like that all the time and just cause problems where they have to make a pass quickly, that's going to be nice all season. That's a huge plus. Next is Alan Bowman. Look, I have been one of the people that said Alan Bowman's the most hated player in Oklahoma State. Not overrated, overhated player in college football. Especially for Oklahoma State fans, more specifically. I think he gets way too much flack. Last season, he really didn't have enough time to throw the football. I felt like the play calling was not built towards his strengths, and he bailed us out. He had a few really good games against Oklahoma. He had a fantastic game. And then also he played really well in that game against Houston. He had a good game against, I believe it was Cincinnati, Kansas. He had a good game. I felt like he had lots of sparks, and he also was coming off an insane injury that he was trying to bounce back from. And man, he showed it this game. He's more comfortable with the team. The chemistry's higher. He was comfortable in the pocket. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 25 for 34. A lot of those incompletions came late. He was actually around like 23 for 25 at one point. 200, I didn't already say 67 yards. And he took off twice. He only threw the ball away once or twice. He only had a couple close calls. It was a really good game from Alan Bowman. And if he can play like that throughout the season, man, Oklahoma State's going to be dangerous because they don't need a great quarterback. This roster doesn't need one. They need a guy that can hit the open route when it's there, and he didn't miss any of those today. And they need a guy that doesn't throw interceptions, and he didn't throw any today. And they're going to be totally fine. His only problem is he's still throwing off the back foot, which is causing him to under or overthrow the ball pretty consistently. So he needs to set his feet a little bit better, but it's still improved significantly. Okay, let's talk about the bad. And I don't want to touch on this very much because, man, look, a lot of people at Oklahoma State losing this game. Kirk Herbstreit has us losing it outright. We were only a 13-point favorite against South Dakota State at home. And I had some concerns. I was very 50-50 on this. We've struggled with FCS teams in the past, Central Arkansas, Missouri State, if you recall. And they're definitely worse than a South Dakota State. So, yeah, I had my concerns. But it was almost a statement win, so I don't want to be on the bad very long. I was very impressed with the team. I think the offensive line and power run packages, a lot of people were saying, oh, the run blocking was terrible. I don't think so. I think on the outside it was fine. There was a couple plays where it was blowing up, but that's fine. That's football. There was a couple where on the shotgun they were able to get out and get to the second level. But I think on power packages, especially under center or pistol or whatever it is, Ollie Gordon just had to make a play. He had to juke a defender out of the front line to be able to get anywhere. And that's going to be a problem. Again, though, South Dakota State has a pretty dang good defense. There's a lot of seniority there. So I think that can improve. But I think for me, if we want Ollie Gordon to be really successful as we go against some better defensive lines like Utah, they're going to have to be able to make a little bit of more of a push. They seemed a little weak there, so that concerns me. Secondary, again, another concern. I think that Corey Black looks way better. He had that one play where he got kind of mossed, but I personally thought that was an offensive PI, and that was also just a sensational catch. He was in position, and if that happens, man, the receivers just made a play. But I will say, I think overall he covered his man really well. There was tons of one-on-ones throughout the game. He was one-on-one most of the game. That's how it is in our 3-3-5 because we blitz the linebackers a lot. We don't drop back into zone as much as I really think we should. And when we do drop back into zone, usually there's a lot of assigned coverages, deep zones by the outside corners. So I thought he filled that role pretty well. I was very impressed. I knew that he was going to be good, but I have concerns about Cam Smith. He kind of got torched a couple times. Rucker is an interesting one. I want to give him some credit. On one hand, he kind of took over Kendall Daniels' role in that hybrid type of player where he plays corner, a little bit of free safety, and then he'll pull in to fill the outside run gaps, which I thought he did pretty well. He filled the gaps pretty decently. He let off one good big play, but outside of that, he actually made a lot of tackles. I think he had 15 on the game, and some of them were huge play saving. So he gets a lot of flack, and I think it's because he's targeted so much because he's such an essential piece of the secondary. But I thought he had an okay game. But Rucker still in deep coverage struggled a little bit. Cam Smith struggled. We had several bailouts on deep throws down the field where the quarterback just missed their guy. That would have been 40-plus yard plays. This could have been a much closer game if one or two more passes connected. But they kind of got bailed out, and it's week one. There were some missed coverages. I think that was just the style of defense that we were running, which is another concern. We were blitzing a ton, especially on third down, and it almost left the secondary exposed, making them look weaker than they actually were. So I think that we were just trusting that he wasn't going to make the throws. We got burnt twice for it, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out throughout the year. Open field tackles was a tiny bit of a concern, not as big as last year. They're making a lot more, but especially on the outside when the running back gets there, missed one or two, resulted in an 8+ yard gain, so that wasn't fun. And then third down play calling by the offense is still anemic. I'm still just baffled at how bad it is. There were 3 third downs that were just, or 4 maybe even, that were just insane plays by the receivers or Alan Bowman or the offensive line, and the play design was actually just terrible. on that one where Ollie Gordon dove out and caught it, basically all of our players turned around after 5 yards, and they were just they didn't even move. It was a terrible play. We had that one, and by the way, that's 4 out of 5 third down. We were 5 for 14 on third downs. We had several. We had that Brendan Presley underneath route that was just a horrible play concept. It's like there was no conception of how many yards out we were for the first down. That part really concerns me. I don't like that that's becoming a trend, and it's been this way with Dunn for a very long time. I think one of his biggest areas of struggles is understanding the depth of the field, understanding the yards to gain, and so many of our play calls just got blown up on third down, and it led to nowhere or led to it being shorter and incompletion or whatever it was. And then we had like 4 3-and-outs in the fourth quarter. That's something else that I was getting worried about. It seemed like we got complacent again. We got lazy again. And man, we've seen people getting back into games because of the 3 runs in a row and then 1 pass or whatever it is in the fourth quarter when we're up by a couple scores. And we can't be complacent like that. We can't. Teams like Arkansas will catch us out. Teams like Kansas State, whatever it is. So I didn't like that. I think that's a huge area of concern heading into the late parts of the season. But I'm done on the bad. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Oklahoma State came out 44-20 against South Dakota State. Huge win, and now they face Arkansas. But before I talk about Arkansas, it's your daily NCAA segment. As an Oklahoma State fan, we have a special hatred for this garbage organization. Absolute garbage organization. I don't even know where to start on this. I could start on the way that NIL currently looks in the world of football. I could talk about how XYZ impacts the sport, such as aren't we legitimately about to allow sponsors on the field? I could talk about how aren't we handing out millions of dollars to players that don't play the game? Or we're talking to players that aren't even on the other team's roster yet before the season ends. So where do we want to start? Billionaires that are giving money to Alabama, to Ohio State that don't ever talk to the player? Or how about donors that do talk to the player behind the back of the universities? Where do we want to start? Because I'm curious. Out of all the problems we have with NIL, a flipping QR codes at the top of your list? Wrong. It's not the action, it's the university. That is a fact. You look at the teams that are rising up, that are starting to gain influence that the NCAA knows doesn't like them. Tennessee, Oklahoma State, they've had encounters in the past, and they're tackling them. Florida, they've had problems with Florida. I'm just going to tell you right now, these head coaches at these big universities that complain about NIL, secretly, in my opinion, really don't have a problem with it. They have a problem with the time commitment of it, but they don't have a problem that they're able to get 5 stars at the snap of a finger because their NIL collective can hand $5 million over. Whereas the Oklahoma States of the world now have to crawl and crawl and crawl. And the idea of an Oklahoma State getting a 4 or 5 star is extremely low because of the NIL situation in college football. Okay? And now we're like, okay, well, let's innovate. Let's try to do this. Let's put QR codes on the back of the helmet. First of all, has nothing to do with a sponsorship. It is not a sponsorship. Each back of the helmet is an individual QR code to donate to the player. It's like having a number. You could look them up on the internet. Do we have to take the numbers off of the back of the jersey? Is that what we have to do? Is that what we're going to do? Because, first of all, the NCAA is a joke. They have no power. They caught Tennessee red-handed. If you want to talk about someone that did something wrong, it's Tennessee. Tennessee gave them the middle finger, walked out the door and said, we don't care what you say or do. And the NCAA said, oh, okay, I guess there's nothing we can do. What are we doing? Why are we continuing to comply with these people? They banned us from the tournament. The Big 12 gave us zero help, didn't let us participate in the Big 12 tournament, which that's a joke. They should have had our aid. We complied with them in the investigation of about, a $300 transaction with a coach that we fired and self-reported, and we got the biggest punishment of any team. Kansas got a slap on the wrist. I'm so sorry, Bill Self got suspended for a few games. But here's Oklahoma State complying. Stop. It's done. They are continuing to target this university with special interest. It is an absolute joke. We're not going to go and stop the billionaires talking to players that aren't on their team. We're not going to stop the billionaires who don't talk to the players and are donating millions of dollars for a kid that doesn't start a game. We're not going to talk about the under the table McDonald's bags and then they say, oh, well, it was NIL from XYZ. This is just garbage, guys. What are we doing? Oklahoma State waited until a couple months ago to allow the university to actually help handle our NIL department with Pokes with a Purpose. We just now got to allowing the posse and all that type of stuff, and then they're like, oh, Oklahoma State's NIL is going up, which, trust me, our NIL is going up. We're becoming significantly more competitive. And the NCAA saw that, like, oh, we can't let them be good every single time, without fail. Look at the investigations. Look at the times of the investigations, right when Oklahoma State is starting to peak. We have talents like Ollie Gordon, who stuck with us. We have talents like Brennan Presley, Rashad Owens, who stuck with us. Our entire offensive line that could start anywhere, stuck with us. And we're trying to innovate for those guys. We're trying to give them QR codes, which actually makes a lot of sense. If you want to talk about NIL, that makes a lot more sense because it's actually on their name. It's actual name, image, and likeness because they're scanning the code after a big play. Fans coming together. How is that any different from me watching Brennan Presley score a game, going on my phone, going, Brennan Presley, Pokes with a Purpose, donating $15. It's not different. It's not different. It's just that the NCAA doesn't want us to benefit because we got a bunch of news out of it. It's garbage. It's garbage. We should not comply. We shouldn't listen to these punks. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? Take away scholarships? Okay. Whose business is that? Who is to tell us how many scholarships to give a player? I'm serious. The courts are ruling in favor of the players every single time. So what's the worst thing that happens? You sue them and you win. It's a joke. It's a joke. All right, enough of that. I'm tired of the NCAA. Oklahoma State shouldn't listen. Whatever. We continue to be weak-legged about that stuff, man. We really do. Let's talk about Arkansas real quick. I'm only going to spend about 5-10 minutes on this. And again, we'll have another podcast tomorrow breaking down everything you need to talk about when it comes to college football, which is going to be really fun. Me and Logan Jones. So, Oklahoma State versus Arkansas. We have about a 55% chance right now. We're an 8.5-point favorite. I have concerns. Jaquindon Jackson, their running back, looked unbelievable. I know it was Arkansas Pine Bluff, but he had 8 carries for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think Arkansas is going to be a problem for us. They won 70-0. But the thing that I noticed, and you can go over statistics all you want, they're really kind of irrelevant against a team like this. You know, they had, also Taylor Green, Taylor Green, their quarterback, had 6 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on top of his 229 yards rushing. Had to drink a sip of water. That QR code stuff gets me up and going. They had about 12 receivers catch a ball. They just looked really fast. I think that's the biggest concern. They seem to like to go deep. They seem to have explosive playability. So I have a feeling how this game's going to kind of go is Oklahoma State could be up like, it's 24-7 or whatever, and then 2 drives later it's 24-20 because Oklahoma State just gets complacent. And I don't know. We're talking about the weaknesses. I think the big play thing could still be a problem. I think we'll see a few of those. Inevitably, I do think this could be a 1-score game, but you just got to win. It doesn't matter because of the current 12-team format, and this is one of my biggest complaints. It doesn't matter what Oklahoma State does. If they beat every single team on their roster by 40 this season, they're going to be at the most a 3 seed. So to me, this is just one of those, all right, yeah, heck, I wouldn't care. I know this is crazy, but I really wouldn't care if we lost if it meant that we did a lot of stuff that helped us learn how to play in Big 12 play. I'm not kidding you. I don't care that much. This game feels very irrelevant to me because I think that the Big 12 is going to get the 4 seed no matter what this season. I really do. At the absolute most, they'll get 3. The Big 12 Champions is going to have a loss or 2. It's just too good of a conference. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned. I don't really feel like it's relevant to the rest of our season. But if we do win, I think it's a huge sign that this team is going to be really legit. And we have Utah, obviously, essentially to open up the Big 12 season. So that's going to be really fun. But I think the speed, the deep play threat is going to be a big problem. Their quarterback can run. That's similar to what South Dakota State could do, but it seemed like we had that well covered off. Got to make the tackles. Can't leave players open like we did this time. They'll connect. They'll connect. So yeah, that's it. Wrap up again tomorrow, around the same time. We'll have another podcast up for you talking about college football and everything you need to know. But host Reagan Harris once again sign off on the Martcast. Have a good day, guys.